Now, Germany's three-party coalition government has reached an agreement on the 2024 budget. Now, this ends a weeks-long crisis triggered by a constitutional court decision that blew a €17 billion hole in the budget. According to the new plans, the government will make cuts to its Climate and Transformation Fund, while financial support for Ukraine will remain in place. The Constitutional Court had ruled that €60 billion in emergency loans to combat the pandemic could not be reallocated to the Climate Fund. The government had done just that, in violation of the country's strict limits on borrowing, known as the debt brake. And to discuss this further, I'm joined in the studio by my business colleague, Chris Kober. Chris, good to see you. So the German government has agreed on these cuts instead of spending more money. So can you explain to us why the German government is so very reluctant to go into debt?
Because, as you mentioned, there is the debt brake and is enshrined in the German constitution. The debt brake says that any German government is only allowed to take on 0.35% of GDP as fresh debt. And the Liberals, which are part of the three-party coalition, were adamant to adhere to this debt brake after the government has been suspending the debt brake during the coronavirus pandemic, for example, or to offset the impact that Russia's war in Ukraine has been having on Germany. There have been calls to reform, to change the debt brake by economists saying that depending on what you spend the money on, there's good and bad debt. But in order to change that, you need the support of the opposition in parliament, which are the Conservatives, who came up with the idea of the debt brake in the first place. So there's no support there. So they have to adhere to the debt brake, meaning that they have to make amends. They will cut subsidies for diesel used by farmers, for example, for the solar industry. They're coming up with new taxes for plastic packaging or a tax on kerosene used on domestic flights. And, as you mentioned, there will be cuts to the Climate and Transformation Fund.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, had vowed in a speech to Parliament to invest heavily in the green transition, despite this whole budget crisis. So is this reflected in the numbers now agreed on?
It is, because the German government, the German state, is heavily investing still in this transformation, but to a smaller tune. The government will put €12 billion less into that fund in the coming year, and up until the year 2027, €45 billion less. So in the coming years, overall, there will still be €160 billion to be invested in the transition towards a clean energy or a green economy, but it is significantly less than intended by the government.
OK. And looking at the German economy, which isn't growing right now, is it? So what does all of this mean for the German economy?
It means that it could be more difficult to get out of this slump, because conventional economic wisdom tells you that in times of low economic growth or no economic growth, it's wise by the government to spend money, to invest, to get the economy going. Now, there is no room for these expenditures, as we have learned. And so with the emissions charge that people and companies are paying for fuel and for heating set to rise, so will costs for households and companies. That's another burden here that we're looking at, making it more difficult for the economy to grow. There could be support from a different area, though, because we have seen that collective agreements have been pushing up wages up to a level that is higher than inflation is right now. So there could be support from households who are, spending more money, and with inflation set to come down further in the coming years, there is the hope that the European Central Bank will also lower interest rates, which then again could be a boon for the economy.
So it's not all bad news then?
Not all bad, but it is challenging.
All right. Our business colleague, Chris Kober, thanks so much.